Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. In the previous video, we have seen how we can interact with NetBox using HTTP GET method and the different ways of retrieving data. In today's video, I will be showing you how you can use the HTTP POST method to create a new device and the patch method to update certain fields within the device object. And finally, I will be using the delete method to remove a device object from the devices table. First things first, let's look at the Swagger interface to examine what actually is required to get this done. So as you can see on the screen here, I have browsed into my NetBox IP address and I've provided the API schema Swagger -UI URL. And the endpoint that we after is the API /DCIM/devices, and we're going to be interested in the post method. So I'm going to click on that one. And here, if you click on schema, we can see pretty much all the variables that are required in order for us to go ahead and create a new device. So what we can see here, we can provide a name for the device. We need to provide a device type. And if we click on the chevron here, we need to actually provide the integer, which I believe is associated with the key as part of, or the primary key as part of the NetBox table. Again, the same applies for the role. That is going to be an integer as well. And the same applies for the site and so on and so forth. So what I will do, I will go ahead and try to create a code, and let's see how we can actually create a new device. But before we do that, if I go back to NetBox and I log in as an admin, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to devices and let's look at the current devices that we have. And you can see that we have only one single device object, which is called router1. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to create a new router called router2. And that is going to be done via the Python code using post HTTP request. All right, guys, I've opened up my IDE, PyCharm, and I've created a new file called netbox_api.py. And what I'm going to start with is by importing the requests library. And also I'm going to say from which import print as r_print. And then first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to create a variable called headers as a dictionary, and inside that dictionary I'm going to create the key, and I'm going to set that key as authorization. And the value is going to be token, and I'll copy the token from my text file, so bear with me 1 second. Right, now that the header is good to go, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a variable called device_type. And if we remember correctly, if we go back to our Swagger interface, you can see that we need to figure out what is the device type integer that we have, as well as the role, as well as the site. And these are the minimum attributes that we need, or the minimum payload data that we need in order for us to create a new device object. So the device type, I'm going to create the endpoint, and the endpoint start with DCIM / device types. And then I'm going to create a URL variable. And in here, I'm going to put the NetBox IP address. Let's say forward / API and /. Next, I'm going to say response requests.get, and I'm going to say URL plus device type, and then I'm going to say headers equal headers. And I'm going to say verify equal false. Now, what I want to do next, I want to go through each of the results that we got from the response. So I will say for each line in response.json, and I'm interested in results key. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to print each line. So that is the first step that we need to do in order for us to get the ID for the device type. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this. And as you can see from the screen here, guys, we've got the ID is 2. So we know that the device type that we have has an ID of 2. So I'm going to actually note that down. Next, I'm going to create another variable, and I'm going to call it devices role. And I'm going to set that as DCIM/device roles. And I'm going to copy that that variable into here so I can get the results that I want. Right, and as you can see here that we've got an ID of 1. So I am going to put an ID of 1. And finally, I need to create another variable, and I'm going to call it sites. And inside that variable, again, I am going to say DCIM/sites. Again, I'm going to copy the variable into the request, and then I'm going to execute the script. And we can see that the site has an ID of 3. So I'm going to copy that one, and I'm going to paste it here. Right, now that we have the mandatory fields, what we can do next is we can add the other attributes as we see fit. So I'm going to start with name. So what I'll do, I will create I'm going to actually, first of all, I'm going to comment all of that. And then what I'm going to do here, I am going to create a data payload. And I'm going to assign that as a dictionary. And in here, I'm going to say name will be router2. I am going to say device. Device underscore type. And here, I'm going to say ID. And that is going to be an integer. So I will leave it as is. And the next key is going to be role. And I'm going to say the ID is 1. And the next one is the site. I'm going to set that as an ID key, and the site that we have is 3. So I'm going to put 3 there. And then let's have a look at what other variables that we can have. So we can fill in the serial number, for instance. We can even set the platform as well, but the platform would have to get the ID for the associated platform. But let's just keep it simple, and I'm going to just create a serial number, let's say. I'm going to put that as test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, guys. So now that I am happy with the payload, what I will do, I will say response go requests dot posts, and in here I'm gonna say URL plus we need to create a new variable, and I'm gonna call that variable just devices equal ECIM / devices. So I'm going to put that variable, and I'm going to paste it here. And then I'm going to say headers equal headers, verify equal false, and then I'm going to say JSON equal data payload. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to print the response, and let's see how it goes. So I'll execute the script, and it says that it's 201, which indicates that it has been created successfully. If I go back to my NetBox and refresh the page, I can see that router 2 has been created successfully. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to try to use the patch method to update the tenant as well as the rack and the IP address. So I'm going to go back to my IDE, and then I am going to create a new variable, and I'm going to call that variable IP underscore address. And in here, I am going to say IPAM / IP dash addresses. I'm also going to create a tenant variable called tenants underscore API. And I'm going to assign it to tenant, actually tenancy / tenant. And then finally, I'm going to create manufacturer. And here I'm going to say DCIM / manufacturer. We also did say that we are going to do the rack, didn't we? So let me just double check. Yes, we would need to get the rack as well. So I'm going to say rack equal DCIM / X. And then what I would do, I will just issue the exit here at this point, and I'm going to uncomment this. And what I want to do next is I'm going to set the variable URL plus the IP address, and then I want to execute to get the IDs in question. So currently we have multiple IP addresses that have been assigned, has an ID of 2, and this has already been assigned to a tenant. And the second object is ID 5. Again, this is assigned to a tenant and is also assigned to a device. And then finally is the IP address that I've just created to so that I can assign it to the router 2 object. And the ID that I'm after is number 7. So I'm going to copy this. and put it there. And then I'll do the same thing for the tenants. Again, I'll copy this, I'll replace the variable, and I'll execute that. And with the tenants, we only have a single tenant which has an ID of 2. So I'm going to copy that ID. And then I'm going to do the same for manufacturer. Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot the /. So I'm going to execute that again. All right, okay, so it looks like I'm missing something. So yeah, I misspelled this. So manufacturers. So I'm going to execute this again. Right, and as we can see, we have multiple ones. We have the Cisco, we have the Fortinet, and we've got the Juniper. But I'm only interested in the Cisco at the moment. So I'm going to copy ID 10. And I'll paste it there. And finally is the rack. So it's going to be in the same location. So I'm going to use the same rack ID. And I'm going to put that there. And next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to update the payload. So what I will do, I will just print all of that. And delete all of this, and I'll start again. And here, what I'm going to say, I am going to say something like, I'm going to start with the role first. And say ID equal 1. I'm going to say site. What did we say with the site? The site is going to be 3. So I'm going to mention device type. Device type is 2. And inside that, I'm going to say manufacturer. And instead of typing it, I'm going to say manufacturer. And I'm going to provide the ID for that. So manufacturer is going to be 10. And also, I'm going to say the primary IPv4 address. Primary underscore IPv4. And ID is, he said, the IP address is going to be 7. Right, next, I think we need to do the tenant. So here I'm going to say tenant ID. And then I'm going to say 2. And then finally, we need to set the rack. And we have a rack of ID 1. If we have done everything correctly with no issues, should be able to get the response 201. But what I'm going to do next, I'm also going to print the response JSON, so we can actually read what has been patched. And here, instead of using the post method, I'm going to actually use the patch method. And finally, the thing that I need to make sure this is payload. Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. So I'm ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and execute the script. And it looks like we have an error. Right. I think what we need to do next is we will need to get the device ID that we're trying to actually update. So what I'll do, I will put that in there. And then that is going to list all the devices that we've created. And if I go all the way up, I can see a device with ID 6 that is associated with router 1. And if I scroll all the way down, I can see ID 7 that is associated with router 2. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy number 7. I will comment all of that section of code. And here I am going to say URL plus the devices plus string 7 / and what I'll do, I'll copy all of that to print so that you can see guys the full URL. And what I'll do next, I'm going to execute this. And you can see the response here is 200. And what I'll do, I'll go back to NetBox and I'll refresh this. And you can see here that the router 2 has been updated with the associated tenant, as well as the rack and the IP address. So what I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to show you how we can then delete an object from the devices. So what I'll do, I'll go back to my IDE. And what I'm going to be doing is, since I know the device ID already, I honestly just need to do, I'll just highlight or uncomment all of that. And here I'm going to say delete. And I wouldn't need the JSON data. And basically what you need is the full URL. As long as you know the device ID that you need, you should be able to go ahead and delete the device object using the delete function. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this. And I get a response of 204. So I'll go back here and I'm going to execute this. And you can see that router 2 has been successfully deleted. That's it, folks. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more tech tutorials. If you have any questions or run into issues, feel free to ask in the comment below. Thanks again for watching, and peace.